so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us back. It's so great to see some familiar faces and a lot of new ones. And Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Just like 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Yeah, they told us we had 20 minutes. We said we can't do that, sorry.
Yeah, we changed it. We're going to do 30.
We're going to do 30 minutes. Okay, so all the relevant things about me. I'm born and raised in Florida. I was in New York City for 22 years. Now I'm back in Miami. Like all the other New Yorkers, we've New York to Miami. My background is in hospitality, but then different sides of real estate the last 15 years. And most notably, as David said, I worked with WeWork in the very beginning. So I'd worked in restaurants with some amazing restaurateurs in New York, Danny Meyer, helped open a great restaurant called 11 Madison Park, worked at a restaurant called Union Square Cafe. I managed at a restaurant called the Odeon. And then I went and was sort of in transition while I was a leader in a global business networking organization called BNI. Has anyone heard of BNI in the room? It stands for Business Network International. There are over 300,000 members in the world. I had a lot of success in New York City, created what became the largest chapter in the country, 4th largest in the world. The premise is that you're bringing together different business professionals from all different industries. And for me, what I loved about working at WeWork was that it was the physical iteration of what I had already been doing with the business networking organization. And so it was when I was with WeWork that I said, oh my goodness, I want to do this on my own. And so I created Primary, which is a shared office-based business in New York City that I ran for 6-7 years. Now I'm just on the board, and my full-time job is nurturing my inner goddess. And I've been doing a lot of healing and reflecting and seeking to find the communities that really resonate with me, and Yoko is one of them, and that's why I'm here to share my magic and pieces of gold with you today.
Love that. Well, my name is Liz Elam. I'm from Austin, Texas, so you will hear me using the y'all term a lot. It means you all. And I was raised in the Northeast, got to Texas as soon as I could, and absolutely love living in Austin. I worked in corporate America for almost 15 years. I worked at Dell. And when I was there, I was one of the top performing salespeople in the world for Dell when Dell was #1 in the world. But I was working from home and I was lonely and I was trying to work out of Starbucks and I was like, this sucks, there has to be a better way. So I opened my first co-working space in Austin in 2010. I sold it in 2019, making me the first woman to successfully exit co-working in the world. In 2012, I started Juicy, which is the world's largest co-working conference series. We've done over 42 conferences around the world. Last year, we did London, Sydney, Toronto, and Chicago. So I build global communities, and it's super fun. I also, just as a side note, have been sober for 14 and a half years of drugs and alcohol. So if anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'd love to talk to you afterwards.
Nice. So what we like to say, and we said this the last talk, is that, so Liz and I are both kind of geeky about creating communities and like bringing people together. And we've been now sharing hotel rooms like around the world, like in Chicago and Portugal and Florida and whatever. And so
if you follow us, you'll see that we're together like literally every 2 weeks.
Exactly. And so we're pretending like we're like in bed right now and you guys are just kind of getting some pillow talk with us. So like just imagine like we're between the sheets and that's maybe going to be the name of it.
But also like nothing wrong with being a lesbian, but we're not. Just so you know.
It's true. Neither of us snore, and so we're like, okay, we can share that. Okay,
this totally works.
Okay, so I think so there's a lot of topics here to talk about. So the art of persuasion, community mastery, making bold asks, being an introvert, when you're needing to be an extrovert because you're creating community and wanting to bring people together and talk to people. So we wanted to, I think just out of the gate, talk about like a crazy, I've been diving into the work of Joe Dispenza recently and attended a week-long retreat in September, just did the advanced follow-up a couple weeks ago and have been really dropping into like crazy levels of meditation, which has really been transcending me, I think, into a crazy space of being really in tune to my intuition. And therefore manifestation. And so we had this crazy moment a couple weeks ago in Miami when Liz was there. I, again, worked very closely with Adam Newman at WeWork. I left and I was asked to come back 2 times. And the second time in 2015 was really the catalyst for me when he said he felt something was missing in his $12 billion company, which it was valued at that point. He said he felt like there was a feeling of connection and community that was missing. And I knew that if he thought I could create it there, that it was time for me to go start my own. Liz, I don't know, you were...
Yeah. So I asked Adam to speak at the very first Juicy when he had 3 locations and nobody knew who he was. I have a knack for finding the next thing and co-working. And so I put Adam on stage in 2012. He came to my space and he actively tried to recruit me, but I didn't want to build his dreams. I wanted to build mine, so I didn't go work for him. I'd also kind of felt like I was doing a deal with the devil, just a little bit, but I'm glad I didn't, although I'd probably be much richer, but that's okay. I'm rich in other ways.
Totally.
So anyway, he tried to recruit me pretty hard, and he wanted me to, I was like, how are you going to scale community? And he's, of course, goes, that's why I would hire you, because that's what you're going to do. Yeah. And I was like, yeah. So, again, like, he's a really amazing, interesting, dynamic human being, and I really considered it, but in the end, it wasn't a fit for me. But we thought it was interesting because I'm in the book, The $1 Billion Loser, as the first person to really question his financial plan, but he tried to recruit both of us to build community.
So we're sitting on the street corner on Friday night, a couple weeks ago in Ball Harbor in Miami. There's no one on the streets, right? And it's like a heavily it's Jewish, heavily Jewish populated neighborhood. Shabbat, everyone's home having dinner, what have you. But we're at this restaurant, we're at a little cafe. We're the only table, the only people there. And next to us
which is called Pura Vida.
Pura Vida, which I think Adam actually is an investor in, by the way. And now there's like 20 of them in New York or in Miami, and it's so expensive and insanely delicious. Anyway, so next door is a place that is completely packed, tables on the street packed with families with 6 to 7, 8 children, because that's how it is. And there's it's Shabbat dinner. They're eating Shabbat. And we're sitting there, we're eating, and we say, what happens? I say to you, oh my God, you say to me,
you said Adam lives in this neighborhood.
I said, oh yeah, you know who bought a place in this neighborhood recently is Adam.
And I said, wouldn't it be so crazy if he walked by right now?
And I said, that would never happen. Look, there's no one on the street, it's just us.
Literally,
and then we look
3 minutes later.
Not even, and I say, Rebecca, and it's Adam's wife, and there's 6 children, and then we turn and we look, and Adam is crossing the street. And that's the first time I've seen him since I met with him back in 2015. It was a flash. They're running into their late, like the last people to arrive. But I got up, hug, and hello, and up, Liz, and I was like, that was some crazy manifesting that just happened. Like, the chances are. So anyway, so back to the conversation, I think about building community, manifesting connections. I think we're going to talk a little bit in this portion about me with BNI, you with AA, and Juicy, right? So I guess just to give you a little bit about BNI. So it's a community where I had tremendous success. I was in it for 10 years, and the general sort of structure is that there are these chapters of the national average in the United States is 25 people. So it's professionals from all different industries who come together. And what sets it apart from other networking organizations is that you can only have one professional per industry per chapter. So you have one architect, one web designer, one real estate broker, one chiropractor, one massage therapist, etc. And so I ultimately was president of 4 different chapters. I became a director. I was director for 13 different chapters, and I taught advanced leadership trainings for a decade, and people would always ask me, what was the secret to your success? And I would always answer communication and consistency, like those 2 C's. And so I think in building an effective community, right, because this is a question, it's $1 million question that you and I get asked all the time, right? And so even when I was asked to come back to WeWork, I mean, I remember Miguel and I, Adam's partner, had some long conversations about how would I do it, because I think the biggest challenge is recreating yourself, right? Because the community will always start with you. So, and every leader that I've ever spoken to, the number one challenge is always in personnel, right? Finding great people is really challenging, but so it will always start with you. And so people would say, what's the secret to success? And I would say, I would show up every week saying the same thing with different levels of enthusiasm and inflection, but good morning, it's 7 o'clock in the morning with all these different business professionals in the room, and people would think I'm a little bit of a, like, what's going on with this woman drinking my decaf coffee. But it would start with me. It would start with my insatiable curiosity about people, wanting to always know, who are you, what do you do, right? If Jaberis was here, he would know. There you are, he knows from our cab ride here from Yoko too. He was like, who's this woman asking all these questions about me? But it's kind of, Pippa and I were talking about it last night, right? It's a way that I do think is possible for you to train yourself to become curious about other people, to ask them, who are you, what do you do, where were you before what you're doing now, how did you get here? Just start coming up with a long list of questions to engage people in the world, and then listen to what they have to say and get out of your own body and get over there with them, because you'll start to collect sort of these pieces of gold and information about people, and then you'll be able to connect them to other people. And that was really what I was able to do at BNI, and it was what naturally translated to WeWork, because I would be giving people tours and I would be saying, who are you, what do you do? And then we'd be walking down the hall and I'd say, oh, knock, knock, knock. And I'd say, oh, John, you need to meet, Paula. And they would say, wow, this is gonna happen if I take an office here? And yes, because the magic sort of started with me as the community builder.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that BNI does really well is they have a very structured, consistent basis. Like, you have to go every Thursday at 7 a.m., right, if you're part of it. So I think that's a good learning, is like, you need to produce rituals for your community, something for them to connect to. And the other thing is, and you heard it last night from David, there's a reason you're all here building this community, and that's because you believe in the core beliefs of Yoko, right? So you have to be able to communicate what the core beliefs of your thing are. And, with Juicy, we figured out pretty early on that, we were building these great communities all over the world, but we didn't really have a connection point other than we knew we needed to provide these spaces and provide community and belonging. But when Sanjay Gupta came out with the article in Harvard Business Review in 2017 about the loneliness epidemic, I'm like, oh, that's it. Like, that's the thing that co-working can help solve, right? If we can connect people during the workday, which is where you spend the majority of your time, then we can help in a significant way eradicate loneliness. So if you give people something that's very broad, that's very basic, that helps a really human thing, you kind of can't go wrong. And I think you can find that thing in almost any business. So find that thing that people can connect to, that can help change the world in some way. Because really, at the end of the day, we're all here to be of service to others. And if we're here to be of service to others, then think about it on like a more global scale, because it's the people that believe they can change the future that actually will.
Yeah, you sound like Steve Jobs or something. I like this. You always say you can't buy it, you have to build it.
Yeah, right? That's the thing, is people always want like the easy fix for community. They want to just like, what's the formula? The formula is you. The formula is rituals. The formula is helping people connect. I constantly, when I ran my co-working space, like the second somebody came in and said, I'm a web designer, I'm like, oh my God, you've got to meet Mark. Mark's also a web designer. I probably send LaRon a connection every other week, because I'm like, oh, this person should meet this person. And I connected you to somebody last week too, a CEO. And I was like, it's this constant thinking about who is the person that could help this person on their journey.
But it can even happen here, right? It happened last night. We're sitting with Derek. Derek's traveled to 150 different countries, which is amazing. You'll hear from him at some point during the event. I'm talking to Pippa, who I just met last night. She's telling me about all the amazing traveling she's doing. And I'm like, oh, Pippa, I just met her. And within 5 minutes of meeting her, I said, you should talk to Derek. And the next thing I know, they're sitting next to each other and talking about showing pictures and all the things, and it's just like, I can't help that. I love, that's my greatest joy, I think, is bringing people together and seeing where there can be sort of synergies. I have 2 pieces of gold to share on that note. In the networking organization, a lot of times, and so I think a lot of the gold that I'm sharing here today is like mindset shifts and sort of reframing of perspectives. But a lot of times, because there was only one professional per industry per chapter, a lot of people would think that, oh, there's overlap, like there's 2 architects can't be in the same chapter. But we, most chapters are 25 people. And when I left, we were 72 people. And that's a lot of different business professionals in one room together. And where we often think there's overlap, if you get curious and ask questions, well, what's your focus? What's your niche? Who do you really like to work with? There can actually be synergy, and those two architects actually don't work with the same types of clients, and they actually could pass business to one another. So again, it kind of goes back to that being insatiably curious. And that's the next piece of gold, which is this phrase that I love that was part of the communication key to my success, which is the notion of making charitable assumptions. And so I think that was really how we led our successful BNI chapter, was that we would sit with people and we would always make the charitable assumption that other people are doing their best. If there was a breakdown in communication, we just wouldn't make sort of broad brush like assumptions about like that person's a bad person or they have malicious intent or whatever. We would seek understanding right before being understood. Like it's these one-liners and sort of like mindsets that really, again, are the foundational keys to success.
Definitely. So let's move on to the bold ask, which you are the queen of.
There's some that we cannot share though up here on stage. They're not PG.
Yeah.
That happened recently. Anyway, okay, so bold asks. Here's, again, more of my favorite quotes. Don't ask, don't get, right? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, said Wayne Gretzky, right? And so I think here's a third sort of piece of gold here with bold asks. I'm thinking to myself, so with primary, I had a $6 million seed investment. It was going to be $3 million, and I put together the financial model, and I said, no, it can't be. It needs to be $6 million. It came from one of the seed investors from WeWork who knew me, but so I don't need to share the details of that, but he said yes to the financial model and the $6 million. But once I got, I joked that once I signed the first lease and became partners with this particular investor was kind of the beginning of the nightmare in a lot of ways and a lot of learning, and he turned out to not be a great partner, and now I need I need like a massage while I'm telling you about this story to relax my nerves. But a lot of learning over the last 8 years. But I think there were nights, we started running out of money. One of my commercial real estate broker friends said to me, Lisa, you bit off more than you can chew. And I said, it's true, Jordan, I bit off more than I can chew. I mean, I'm entrepreneurial. I'm someone who lives unconventionally. I trust that I am as resilient, resourceful, and positive as they come, and I'll always sort of be able to figure things out. And so as we signed on to take additional space, we needed to raise more money. And I looked to my partner, my investor partner, and said, we're going to need another $2.5 million. And he said, don't worry, we'll find it. I didn't get it in writing. He's a Hasidic Jew. We shook hands. I thought that meant something. It did not. And we started running out of money, and we're in the middle of multi-million-dollar construction projects. And I needed like $3 million, like tomorrow. And so I guess the point of sharing that is that I started to really make a lot of bold asks. And the motto that I kept sharing with our team at Primary was, don't get stopped. Don't get stopped. Wherever you get stopped, pause, look back, say, how can I keep going? And so it was literally like I would look at my ex-husband who was working with me at the time, and I'd say, you go home and relieve the nanny, because I, by the way, have two adorable boys named Hawk and Henry who are 6 and 8, and I love them so much. And I would say, we have payroll on Friday. It's Wednesday night. I'm not leaving until I get someone to wire us $30,000 tonight so that it gets there tomorrow so we can make payroll. I mean, our personal bank cards declined once a month for 12 months. We borrowed money from members. I borrowed hard money. I borrowed $500,000 twice and paid back $600,000 within 90 days twice. I did $300 and paid back $360 within 90 days. I mean, I did lots of hard money loans. We maxed out 17 credit cards. I mean, I looked at my bookkeeper and I said, this isn't normal. Most entrepreneurs don't do this. And he's like, no.
No, and I always said during that time, I was friends with Lisa, and I was like, I would quit. Like, there's no quit in this girl. Like, I fully would have been like, never mind, I'm hitting a brick wall, I'm going to go the other way. No, she persisted and kept persisting, and it was amazing to watch. Yeah, it was really exceptional. But, it's also, I think the thing about, when I hear about a bold ask, I also start thinking about, like, negotiations, because that's where I do a lot of my bold asking. And so I've often spoken about negotiations, so I'll just give you a couple of my little nuggets on that one. And the first one is shut the you-know-what up. Just shut up. Because people tell you everything you need to know about them and about their motivations if you'll just listen. So the main thing in a negotiation is to shut the fuck up. Because people will tell you. And then this is where, in my opinion, you ask the bold ask, the really bold asks. Because Again, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So like, ask it. I don't feel like there is a person in this world I can't get connected to. If I wanted to connect to Barack Obama, I would make that a thing and I would make it happen. I just don't need to right now. But if I wanted to, I absolutely could. I'm kind of known to stalk people occasionally, and that's okay. But you know what? It's because I want them on stage, and it makes a lot of sense for them to connect with me, and then they get to understand why it makes a good sense for them to connect with the community, because we're going to help evolve their business as well. So shut up in a negotiation, but ask for the really big things, and no, there isn't anyone in the world you can't connect with. We're all just humans. We're all just energy, and you can connect with anyone that you choose.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Okay, so next thing we want to talk about is embracing your social chameleon. So being an introvert in an extroverted world, which I thought it was fascinating because I thought you said you were an introvert. I'm obviously an extrovert, but
I'm an ambivert.
And I'm like, what is that? Does
and then she's like,
know what is that word?
That is.
Do you raise your hand if you know what an ambivert is?
Okay, see?
Raise your hand if you don't know what an ambivert is. Can I get my people, please? Thank you. Okay. Tell us, what is
So
it?
an ambivert is somebody that is sometimes an introvert and sometimes an extrovert. So I love the energy of people. I love being around people. I love being in the co-working space. I feed off the energy of other people, but I recharge alone. I really need my own space to get that energy back and refill my cup.
I left last night.
I know. I'm like, we gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta get to bed.
I feel so full and energized. I love it.
Yeah, she kept me up till 1.
You put on an eye mask and I just turned out the lights. Okay. Anyway, so Dr. Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, calls himself an introvert, which is so crazy, right? Because they're in 75 countries, 300,000 plus members, and like, he says he's an introvert. And so the question becomes, how, if you are introverted, can you navigate and build community in an extroverted world, or like attract sort of everybody, like play on both sides of the fence, I guess, so to speak. And for me, some of the tips that I wrote here were about, number one, fake it till you make it, right? And so that was always one of my favorite it's like perception is reality is another way, more gracious way, I think, to say that. And so, for example, it was one of my favorite tips to share when I'm coaching business professionals on how to introduce themselves in networking meetings. Because yes, as an introvert, if you are up to creating a community in the world, you're going to have to be out there in the world introducing yourself. And so I think it is so important to not focus on what you don't want people to see. So you pretend like you have a finite amount of time, like you do, right? It's M&M, right? You only get one M&Ms. I won't say M&Ms. M&M. You only get one shot, right? So it's like, who are you? What do you do? How do you provide value to your clients? Or what? Have your one-liner sort of pitch down. Like practice it with a friend. Practice it into videos, whatever it is. But know without wavering, exactly who you are and exactly how people can help you. And this again, it ties beautifully in with the bold ask. But coming to a place like this, I just joined an amazing new community actually in Miami called the Armada, that's coming together. And what I love is that when we come together like this, for me in a dream, now I'm Laurent and I are having a conversation, I'm unsolicited giving him advice, but I'm it would be so amazing if at the round table, it's a longer format, it is tough, it takes a timekeeper, and look, I ran meetings with 80 to 100 people in the room, and we would keep it within 2 hours, so everybody would literally get, initially when we launched the chapter, they would get 1 minute to introduce themselves, and then at one point we had to reduce it to 30 seconds, everyone had 30 seconds to introduce themselves, and people were like, oh my God, how can I tell everyone all that in 30 seconds, and we're like, if people are paying millions of dollars for a commercial at the Super Bowl and getting their message in, you can do it too. But so you get really, really succinct. And so right now, here today, my invitation to you all over the next 3 days would be, if there's something big that you're up to in the world, if there's some introduction or change that would really be meaningful to you in your business, your life, spit that out of your mouth to everyone, if you can get it to every single person here, because the magic that's possible from that, imagine what that would feel like to get exactly what you want to take your life or your business to the next level, and that you get that because you just had the courage to spit it out, because you took the 15 seconds to think, what is that thing? And then you just didn't get stopped in asking for it.
Yeah, and I think it's also we all have, I actually don't really like the imposter syndrome, because everybody has that. Everybody has insecurity. Everybody second guesses themselves. it's just not possible to not have that. So I think what really helps, and actually I don't often quote sports people, but Kobe Bryant said, don't negotiate with yourself. I never negotiated with myself. And I loved that. So if you turn off that voice that's saying you're not good enough, or you can't ask that, or you shouldn't, or this person's a CEO and I'm not, whatever, like just do it anyway. Turn that inner critic off. And this is totally kind of off topic, but I've been saying this for so many years and I absolutely love it. Like, okay, everybody close your eyes for a second. Think about a precious 5-year-old in your life. Who's like a precious child in your life. Okay, now, don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to that kid. Think about that, because what are the things what's your inner voice telling you? All right, you can open your eyes. But like, just let's not have that kind of talk. And that helping silence that and pushing that away will help give you this courage to go out there and ask these things, right? Because if you stop listening to that inner critic, you're going to feel better, you're going to feel more empowered, and you're going to be able to make these bold asks.
Yes, I love it. So next we're supposed to talk about crafting communities with heart. Blueprints for belonging. We already kind of touched a little bit on the importance of mental health, but maybe there's more that you want to say there because I know you're so passionate about it.
Yeah. I have been super passionate about it for a long time, and I love getting it out into the light. Like, feel free to talk about your mental health. It's something also, like, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know somebody who suffers from mental health, right? Everybody has somebody in their life. If it's not you yourself, then somebody in your life has it. And unfortunately, COVID greatly increased the numbers of death by suicide, of depression, and of loneliness. And so, it's really up to every single one of us to put mental health out into the light and stop making it a shameful thing or something you're embarrassed about. It's just really important because we're dying. And, it's you and me looking somebody in the eye and really seeing them that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yes. Eye contact. There's something, a lost art, so to speak, right? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the primary ethos. So my business in New York, the ethos, and we're in New York City is in an interesting time right now. It's a bit wounded. I don't know what others in the audience from New York think about that, but the bounce back has not been real. And, we're doing some pivoting a little bit with primary. The occupancy is not back up where we thought it would be, but because everybody's in Miami, where occupancies are 100%. But that said, the ethos of primary, the motto is you work best when you feel great. And so I think, again, coming back to creating community, for me, it took a few years to figure out how I would be different from WeWork. And for me personally, what's super important is the idea that when we make our primary focus, ourselves, our body, our well-being, everything in our life can thrive. And so in our space, there's lots of live greenery, preserved moss walls. We have an on-site studio where we host yoga, meditation, boot camp classes. There's a healthy fruit and juice cafe, lots of large scenic photographic images so that when you're busy hustling away looking like this, you can look up in the middle of the concrete jungle and you can see, this beautiful landscape and kind of, take a deep breath and drop back in and feel centered. And so I love Laurent. Of course, I'm going to be doing my constant cycle here between the sauna, jacuzzi, and cold plunge because it's just like water and everything to take care of ourselves. But I think that when you're creating community, right, think about your ethos and what's important to you, get out there and share the message. And I think that is what people will flock to, is the message that is authentic to you and the community that you're creating.
Yep. And, I think the thing is just get real true with who you are and your authentic self and then give that to the world. Yeah. And that's who you are, right? You pay a lot of attention to your wellness and what you're doing, and that's what you give with primary.
But I didn't, and that's again part of my learning, and it's taking more to explain here. But in retrospect, when I look at it, it was very stressful to need to be raising millions of dollars, to have 2 small children, to have an ex-husband who was not happy in New York. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of weights on me, and I really have shed a lot of heaviness over the last couple of years that I've been resetting myself, I think, in Miami. But yeah, I don't know. I guess if I could give advice to my 5-year-old self or looking back on this self, it would be, how can I surround myself with people who are reminding me to come back to my center, when I'm sort of was losing sight of that because I was getting so caught up in the hustle and bustle and the things I ought to do, because I really did that. And now I'm finally, you're catching me in a really great moment where I feel like I'm becoming myself again. The last month, I've really cut some ties to the past and done some really great healing. Yeah. And I'm happy to talk to anybody more about that because I'm excited about it.
And I think, I think we're about to wrap up and maybe see if there's any questions. But I think, also, if you had told me when I started my co-working space in 2010 that I would then go on to hold co-working conferences all over the world and help people build their brands and help people partner and help people start, and that I would bring it to over 20,000 people, I'd be like, you are crazy. And by the way, I started that business at 40. And yes, I just dated myself. But, most entrepreneurs, by the way, are 40-year-old women. So get busy, ladies.
Amen. Yes, to that. Okay, so I think, it's time to wrap up here a little bit. We did have a note here that I was supposed to talk about magic and you were supposed to make fun of me, but I guess we'll skip over that.
You can get that any time of the day.
I think I was going to say, my parting sort of word of wisdom that I wrote down here is another one of my, you can hear I have millions of favorite quotes, but if you want something you've never had, you'll have to do something you've never done. And so I think leaning into, again, the sort of curiosity of what can I be doing that I haven't done, that I'm afraid of, do that, because that's where the magic lies, is in the unknown.
Any questions? All right. Well,
what did you say about the magic?
Oh, about the magic.
Don't spare us the magic.
What's that?
Don't spare us the magic.
Don't spare the magic. I know. It's funny. I had a friend of mine from elementary school reach out to me recently, and she said that she and another friend used to think that I was made of magic because I could get anyone to do anything I wanted them to. So I've been kind of focused on the art of persuasion, I think, since I was very young. But I think I shared a lot of the magic with you. It's the don't getting stopped. It's the making charitable assumption about others. It's getting curious. I'm just going to say it, I like to shut the fuck up and listen also. I can talk a lot. I think a lot because I have so much bursting inside of me from experience that I want to share with others, because I want you all to live prosperous, thriving lives also in whatever all of your individual endeavors are as well. But
yeah, definitely the older I get, the quieter I get.
Yeah.
The more I listen.
Yeah, listening. There's a beautiful something that can come from listening. And for me right now, that's been in closing my eyes. I've been doing meditations 20 to 55 minutes a day, 5 days a week for the last 3-4 months. And I found this really beautiful thing happening where I used to be afraid of the idea of closing my eyes because I felt so vulnerable about what other people would see. And what I've discovered is that I really love what I see here in myself when I close my eyes. And I'm starting to really get all of the messages behind where I'm going and what I'm doing. And that's the magic for me right now.
Very good.